Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today we're checking out Gnoster, Wisdom of Night from Elden Ring Nightreign. Yeah, I know they're insects, but if you thought I'm skipping this one, you be bugging! Listen, it was either this joke or something about ancient Mesopotamia. So I think we got it good. From the subject matter alone, I can tell you today's gonna be a doozy. I'm really looking forward to it. But before we begin, if you're new here, hi, I'm Daniel D. Teach. I'm a college teacher for music composition and production. Let me tell you how this video is gonna go. For every phase of Gnoster's theme, we're going to have an uninterrupted listening, followed by a breakdown. In between the different phases, we're gonna talk about lore, philosophy, psychology. Yeah, usually there's a lot to talk about. For your convenience, there are chapters below so you can navigate freely. Trust me, this one is a rabbit hole, so without further ado, let's begin. Oh, the piano in the background. Oh, that's so cool. Oh. That's surprising. It's so gentle. But with the heavy drums in the background, such a cool contrast. And the harp, it's so dominant. Just these moments of dissonance. It's gorgeous. Oh, that conversation. Okay, that was phase one, and there is already so much. Come on, let's dive into it. Let's get back to the start. We begin with this sound that's hyper fantastical, with the high woodwinds and the high strings. Everything is extremely ethereal. It really makes sense because both the music theme and the naming scheme of the boss, both of them put a lot more emphasis on the luminous silk moth that is Gnoster. We'll dive more into that division probably in the second or the third phase, but right now, we can really feel how this slow movement of the wings is described by the movement of the flute and the high strings. They're already basing that as the kind of color they're using to describe Gnoster. But it's very interesting to see that both here in the beginning a piano and later a harp plays such a big role in this track. The melodic material as well, by the way, it really is very round. It doesn't have edges. Very pleasant, something that's very soft, which is definitely not descriptive of how poisoned you're gonna be if you're not careful in this boss fight. This type of movement that doesn't stop, it's absolutely beautiful. Notice how they're moving your focus from one instrument to the next, from one range of the music, right? The register, if it's low or if it's high, it's moving between the different instruments of the orchestra so elegantly, so smoothly. It doesn't feel like they're breaking it apart. It feels like they are passing it between them in like one brush movement. Also, this is a very interesting melodic movement. It is mainly descending, and it begins in a way that seems familiar to us from the scale. But then, I think it moves into a more chromatic sound that is external to the scale, and it feels to me like they are really playing with that sense of something dangerous, something vile hidden inside the beauty, like a dark truth beneath the surface, something that occasionally picks its head, a little bit of dissonance, which is a good excuse to go on a tiny tangent when it comes to the word dissonance. A lot of times people use the word dissonance to describe something that doesn't fit right, something that is disharmonious. But I think it's important to remember that in music, dissonance is still harmony. The opposite of dissonance isn't harmony, it's consonance. And the reason why that matters is because the fine-tuning of dissonance is exactly the thing that gives us the right type of emotion for every different piece of music and media. So at the moment in which there is a turn from the expected and the known into something more challenging to our ear, this. There is something that's a bit spicier here towards the end. Just like you're seeing the beauty of Gnoster first, but the cloud of poison will surely follow. Me? Scarred from the amount of times I got poisoned in that fight? No! Not at all! And if you also think I have skill issues, hit the bell. I've heard it helps. From science. Let's continue. Here we're hearing a development of the motif that we've had at the beginning of the track, that little bit of melody. But it also combines the same rhythm from the descending movement we've had before. So here we have it's a lot more stable, it's a lot more calm than the descending one. It's less dissonant, which really brings a sense of serenity into the piece. Here, I think we're hearing both the violin and the cello playing in octaves. They are playing in parallel, they're playing the same pitches but in different registers. That connects really well with that combined movement of both Gnoster and Fortis towards you. Because we need to remember, while we only have one health bar, Gnoster is the butterfly, not the pseudo-scorpion. So having them move in tandem, one above each other, in parallel, as above, so below, it really yields a lot of gravity to the moment, and it makes you see both of them as one unit, while still being made of multiple parts. In case you haven't watched any of the previous videos, my impression is that in the original Elden Ring, the harp, especially in the main theme, was representative of America. And the harp is very dominant here, even when compared to the main theme. Within the soundtrack of Nightreign, we've seen it in Heolstor's theme and in the main theme, but here it's even more prominent, even more upfront. And I have this deep sense that it connects to the idea behind Gnoster and Fortis. So let's remember that as we move forward, that the harp is uniquely present in this piece. And yeah, we'll give it some thought. Just a few small hits of wooden percussion, but that rattling sound, it really gives you a sense of where these creatures come from. The kind of habitat that they used to have before it got absolutely destroyed. It scratches your brain in such a unique way. I really appreciate those small details that they put in. In the low end, you can even hear that little bit of nervous movement, of uncertainty, of boom, boom. Check it out. Again, just small moments that all contribute to that sense of where are we standing. Something I really like about the bosses of Nightreign is that they set the scene with the music before the fight emotionally begins. And that's important to note, that space between you and the boss, when you're walking in that desolate space of the Night Lord. They are using that space between you for storytelling via visual design and the music. And the fact that the arena is relatively predictable, unlike planning a game like Elden Ring, for example, in which you'll be working on things long before you know where you'll be fighting them. Here, that certainty gave them the confidence to do very intentional and very reliable storytelling with the music. You can notice here how the violins are waiting. I'm not talking about the solo violin. I'm talking about the section. There is this movement of wah, wah. It's like this flow of energy, something really magical. Let's hear it again. That moment, do you hear that? That is an instrument playing with uncertainty. Something that is just a bit out of tune, something that isn't playing with confidence. And they are planting that hiding darkness, like that beautiful facade of Gnoster holds a very dark, very disturbing secret. It's such an eerie moment. Such a beautiful moment. As we've talked about before, that moment of breathing before the entrance of something great. It makes it feel more important. Not only that, this isn't just a regular break. This really shows the contrast between Noster and Fortis. Because what we're hearing here is the contrast between the flute, an airy instrument, a melodic instrument, to the timpani, an instrument of percussion, of aggression. And just like the flute flies high above, so does the percussion have its strong attack low, below. I can't think of a better way to have that breathing moment before the entrance of the grand theme of Phase 1. Before we've had those clicky wooden percussions, now they are combining the sound of the harp, made by plucking a string, with the sound of percussion, which could be one of many instruments that are played with two gentle sticks over a set of strings. Again, we see a theme of constantly merging forms, of incorporating them into one another, which is so meaningful considering the subject. I can't wait to get to the lore talk, my god! As they're moving into a repetition of the theme, just with a larger orchestration, female vocals come in, also meaningful, very meaningful. We also have this gesture of the flute that is very descriptive of a butterfly. You can just hear that soaring to the sky when this theme begins again, the repetition. Check it again. It's really a flourish that does so much more when it's combined with the visuals that we have in the game. Such a powerful display of what happens when a combined medium like this makes the most out of the connections of the different forms of art it holds within it. I take it back, it's not female vocals, it's a cello. It's just playing in a very singing range. The relative range that a melody has within the range of an instrument. It has a lot of effect on the character of that sound. And it really sounds like a person singing in that range. That's why I got it confused. Listen for that line below. Ta-da! Listen for that line. Listen for that line that isn't the main melody. Da-da-da-da-da. Check that line out. Now here we have another example of something we talked about before, which is called counterpoint. The craft of writing overlaying complementary yet independent melodies. And it sounds like they're having this profound conversation between them. I think this phase describes really beautifully that long and arduous journey that these two had to go together because their habitat got destroyed. There was definitely a female choir. The sopranos were singing. Here, we definitely had female human vocals. Now, I think I know why the choir just joined in, and it has something to do with the way those melodies are built. The vast majority of melodic material in this phase relies on what we call the Dorian mode. This set of notes. The Dorian mode was extremely popular in chant, Christian, and prayer music, especially in religious pieces of music that were composed for the church, for choral singing, for voice singing. And the semantic connection between this collection of notes I think there's great importance in the choice of that mode, and in the choice of including the choir at the end. And it comes just in time because it's lore o'clock. Let's begin with the item description for Gnoster's knight. The knight belonging to Gnoster left upon its defeat. The power of its namesake can be unlocked by performing a relic rite. The secluded forest was being eaten away by the surrounding desert, and when the blessing of water passed over its many leaves and boughs, thus began a great exodus of its creatures. To survive, the insects would have to adapt. So began their prolonged and perilous journey. The imagery that's being described to us is of a forest slowly being eaten away by a surrounding desert. It definitely feels symbolic, but I do feel it's a little bit early to say for sure what it represents. And when the blessing of water passed over its many leaves and boughs. Beyond the general idea of natural disasters, this makes me think of a video that was just released by Scummage Info. Definitely recommend checking it out, by the way. In that video, he talks about how the moons, looking over the lands between, potentially affect the direction and the movement of water. Now, I personally think Nightreign is definitely not the Age of Stars that Ranni is building towards. That final night with Heolstor, it's moonless. Oh, I wasn't talking about you. No, you can go to sleep. We'll talk about you another day. So who knows, maybe a lacking moon could have affected how water moves through the world that these guys come from. Just a thought. Now this text is interesting, but it hardly tells the whole story. And I think we should go through a different angle if we are to discover the different mysteries that this duo presents. And it all begins with Gnoster's name. Our adorable looking, parasite installing, fluffy silk moth is titled The Wisdom of Night. Combined with the word wisdom, I have zero doubt in my mind that Gnoster's name is inspired by the word gnosis, a Greek word meaning knowledge, or more accurately, named after Gnosticism, a faith that branched out of Christianity. Now, I'm no theologist, just a nerd. But I think, even in broad strokes, it's important to look at Gnosticism to try and understand better why is this boss here, what is it trying to tell us. This explanation will inevitably be surface level, but I think even that would be extremely telling. So, Gnosticism is a collection of religious ideas and systems that coalesced in the late 1st century AD among early Christian sects. Like I said before, the word Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, to know. Though there is a collection of ideas that is under the umbrella of Gnosticism, there are things that those ideas have in common. For example, they are building on Christianity as a base, but they shift the story quite a bit. Gnosticism claims that Jesus did not redeem the world by dying on the cross, by taking the sins of everyone onto himself and then coming back to life. Gnosticism claims that the way Jesus redeemed the world is by transferring unique knowledge that is necessary to ascend from the physical realm into the spiritual realm. Now I can hear the wheels turning for anyone who's ever played Bloodborne. Is this gnosis the same as insight, for example? Not exactly, but don't worry, many more chips are gonna fall in place. Gnosticism also claims that this physical realm is a realm of suffering, of deceit, of lies, an illusion created by a lesser deity, a prison that is to be escaped from. Now, some of you are thinking about the Matrix, which is fair enough. Gnosticism is extremely influential. But that's not all. To go deeper, we would have to examine something that is common to all texts that are considered to be Gnostic, that being the creation myth. While I'm telling you the general gist of the creation myth based on Gnosticism, I will put some images here to my left. You can ignore them if you want, but I think they might be useful in understanding some symbology, some parallels, not a one-to-one replication of this creation myth. You'll see what I mean. So, our story begins with the head divine entity of the world. An entity that is so far and so different from us, we couldn't possibly imagine it, we couldn't possibly perceive it. And since that entity is such an overflow of energy, of divine essence, it begins emitting sub-entities from it, lesser deities that spread farther and farther away throughout the cosmos. Some of them are very, 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 very far away. In fact, none of these beings have direct connections to that head deity. These lesser deities emitting from the source are called ions, and they all embody different aspects of that main source deity. Let's call him the One Great. All that existed at that point is the spiritual realm, a divine realm of truth, of peace, of perfection. That realm was called the Pleroma. However, we can't have nice things. So, somebody had to mess it up. That somebody is an ion named Sophia. Sophia in Greek means wisdom. Philosophia, the love of wisdom. And true to her name, Sophia wanted to know and encompass the entire Pleroma. She wanted to know everything and see everything, even the One Great. But she bit off more than she could chew, and she fell out of the Pleroma. Now Sophia herself, out of the Pleroma, keeps emanating beings from her. And because we can't have nice things, somebody had to mess it up. One of Sophia's sons conspired against her. Now, different myths describe him as either malicious or ignorant, but long story short, here was the plan. Him and his conspirators were going to break Sophia apart. They would break her into many, many, many parts, and to make sure that she's incapable of escaping, they would create a physical realm, a prison, in which they would plant her parts inside of many different people. And so Sophia was, let's say, shattered. A physical realm with people in it was built to be her prison, and many, 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 many people had those little pieces of Sophia within them. Now, already here we have a huge difference on how the world was created. It wasn't created by the will of a benevolent God. It was made as a result of a cosmic catastrophe that began with Sophia's mistake to try and understand everything, her fall out of the Pleroma, and her shattering and capturing by her own son. In most Gnostic texts, that son of Sophia that betrayed her and imprisoned her, that created this physical world of lies, that demiurge, that by Gnosticism is the God of the Old and the New Testament. A false god driven by malice, who created a prison, who created a world of suffering. And the people created in this physical realm, they are all just prison cells. So based on Gnosticism, gnosis, or knowledge, is the way to escape the physical realm of suffering. Now, we're not talking about just any knowledge, the knowledge relevant to Sophia in particular, which is claimed to be the knowledge that Jesus taught when he was alive, and the knowledge he gave to his apostles after his death. Now, this is when things get a little murky. For example, in some Gnostic texts, there isn't even a reference to a crucifixion. I think such an example can be found in the Gospel of Judas. But I find a different Gnostic text a lot more interesting and relevant to Gnoster. The name of this text is the Apocalypse of Peter. But I'll be saving this one in particular for the second phase. So, what connections can we see between Gnoster, its lore, its name, and the music? Well, let's begin with the design. Gnoster is a silk moth, a luminous, glowing silk moth. That is already a very interesting choice. You see, in nature, silk moths are nocturnal. That means that when they fly, it's usually by the guidance of the star and the moon. Since they fly at night, that is the light that guides them. Not only that, what do we know about moths? We talk about how they're attracted to flame, but they are attracted to light. Now, is there a better depiction of an animal seeking enlightenment? Gnosis. This on its own would be enough of a reason for me to see the connection between Gnoster and its design. But it's definitely not everything. For example, within the boss fight, we only see Gnoster named on the health bar, at least until the third phase. Fortis isn't mentioned until later, which kind of alludes, I think, to the fact that Gnoster is the one controlling Fortis. It's the one making the decisions, the thinking. This is already a very cool duality. You have this ethereal, magic-using moth that has to be intelligent, by the way, so it can use magic. We know that. And it is striving for the spiritual realm. And in contrast to that, you have the physical realm representer, Fortis. He's more heavy, more earth-oriented, more of a brute force. Now thinking about that, the choice of instruments in the first phase makes a lot of sense. It's not only the design, the concept behind Gnoster, this being that strives for the spiritual realm, while its enforcer, on the ground, is a more physical being. And so we have the contrast between the earthly percussion and the ethereal strings and winds. But wait, there's more. That relationship of an ethereal being acting its will upon the world through a physical enforcer, that sounds a lot like the relationship between a god and a lord. That already brings a lot of questions. And you know what we do with questions on this channel. We save them for phase 2. If you remember, at the end of phase 1 I said that the melodies are mainly made of the Dorian mode, a scale that is highly connected to Christian religious pieces, which is very appropriate considering the fact that Gnosticism was developed as a branch, a sect of Christianity. Another reason that makes this scale a good choice is it's the brightest of the darkest scales. So it's constantly on that verge between enlightenment and darkness, a creature seeking to ascend as a higher being to enlightenment, and yet they are agents of destruction at the service of the night. It's ironic, it's poetic, it's beautiful. So I guess it's time for an uninterrupted reaction of phase 2. it's back. It's back to that dance of night. Oh, they're playing on the motif from the first phase. That wooden percussion is so cool. The brass is so exposed. Female vocals are back. It's so scratchy. Oh, the woodwinds are like going crazy up top. So beautiful. That little... So good. This second phase is weird. What happens mechanically in this phase, if I'm not wrong, is that Gnoster sits on top of Fortis. And now they are functioning as like this double tank unit, which really supports this imagery of the ruling god and the enforcing lord. And also it kind of reminds me of the adjudicator from Demon Souls, that had this kind of bird that was telling it what to do. Because I'm pretty sure it's implied that the adjudicator is the bird. It's just controlling like a giant demon body. Just like here, Gnoster is in control. Fortis doesn't even get a name, even in this phase. What a beautiful opening for this phase. It has this sense of squeezing time, condensing time, because things get faster and faster and faster. Then we can hear the flutes flourishing above like the movement of Gnoster. And there is still no sense of time yet. They are really playing with your attempt to understand what the tempo is. At this point, they are intentionally prompting your brain to look for a message. Wait for it, is what this opening tells you. Wait for what? They pull your attention towards the rhythm. And what happens in the rhythm here? They're still hiding information from you. You can start to maybe understand what's the tempo, what is the pulse of the music, but they're hiding the meter. They're hiding the time signature. In the first phase, it was 3/4, but it was so slow and sparse, it didn't really feel like that dance of death and night that we got used to. Namely in the main theme and Heolstor's theme, and music that happens right towards the second night as the rains gather. But after they're being coy for a little bit, it does show up. The melody reveals it. And now it's faster, it's dancing more freely. As you can see, the two insects working in tandem, which is what you get when you have the harmony between the mind and the body. And there are a lot of things to support the idea that the world of Elden Ring is body-mind dualistic. Although it's also possible that it has three elements: body, mind, and soul. Let's get back to our nightly dance of inevitable death. Now we have da-dee-da-da-da-dum, which is a development of da-dee-da-dee-da-da. It's a very smart way of making sure that those pieces of melody you crafted for the first phase, that they're not just getting wasted and lost. So even when something chaotic happens, yeah, you condense them, you change them, you create variations, but these are still offshoots of the same origin tree. Beautiful example of counterpoint. All of these independent melodies coming and going from one section of the string orchestra to the other side. Just this conversation happening between all of them, and all of them have room. They all have space. It's so easy to overwrite when intensity rises in a boss fight. This is meticulous. This shows superb level of control over the musical material. This is some magical stuff, and it only gets more beautiful the more you look into it. So many layers of movement, of melody, all of them noticeable. All of them could be looked at directly or looked at from the larger picture. God damn, why you gotta do me like that? Jesus. Did I just hear what I thought I heard? Wait, I want to hear it again. Yes, yes. This is like a little injection of the Night Lord into this. Ta-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is like a touch of the main theme, just hidden inside of this. This really is one of these things that you might not even notice, but they bind the soundtrack together. It's the reason why this soundtrack feels like a cohesive piece of music and not just a set of disparate tracks. It's like when good writers write characters. Those characters should talk in a way that represents who they are. And if a sentence appears that belongs to that character, you should be able to recognize that it's them without the book even telling you to begin with. It shows a phenomenal level of attention to details, of understanding, of care for the craft. Truly spectacular. Da-dee-da-dee-da-da. That line, that melodic line, is also very Dorian. It is also very choral singing coded, if you will. Such an adherence to style and color. Really, they don't skip a beat on this one. All we have here is a reduction for the sake of a rise. But it's not only reduced dynamically. They're not only playing softly. The writing here is more sparse. It's more ambiguous. There is less of a direct melody to follow than we've had before. So we moved from something that is a multitude of melodies, something that is hard to comprehend, something that if you try to wrap your head around it, you will most likely fall short. And then you have what's out of the pleroma. That ambiguous, ill-defined void you fall into when you try to bite off more than you could chew. Beautifully written, beautifully written. This emphasis of movement, a whole tone down, the context around it is different, but it really feels a lot like it alludes to Radagon's theme from the original game. And after this phase, we're going to talk about it, but it connects to so many different things that are worth exploring. so good. Leading a melody from a starting point that has a certain nature, a certain kind of character, and taking it through a journey until it evolves to its final form, becoming a butterfly, if you will. That little touch of the wooden percussions at the end, yeah, it sends shivers down my spine. Like they know that it's contrasting all of the long notes, all of these lush chords and melodies that kind of linger forever. Their movement is so smooth because of how they want to depict Gnoster. They know that little earthy is going to create that contrast in you. It also kind of makes me think about how Fortis digs into the sand and out of it. So yeah, they nailed this one. Which means it's time to set the scene for the third phase. Because I think the most important contribution to us understanding the meaning of Gnoster, why it's here, the way I see it, the thing that blows the discussion about Gnoster wide open is what happens in the Everdark event. The thing that happens in Phase 3. After you're done draining Gnoster's health bar, it becomes 3 health bars. The name of Fortis is revealed, but more importantly, we have a third character to talk about. A third being called Animus. This is a huge deal. Animus being the archetype in Carl Jung's model of the psyche that describes the masculine within the feminine. Contrary to the animus, there is the anima, which is the feminine within the masculine. In Jung's process of individuation, which is the process of connecting with your actual self, there are different portions of your being that you need to come to terms with. You need to find your peace with them. You need to root out the problems they present. On previous videos, we mentioned how the persona is a mask that we wear towards the outside world, with the ego being the way that we perceive ourselves. Our actual self at the core is inaccessible to us directly. So we have to reconcile all of these conflicting different archetypes so we can have access through them to that self. So what place does the animus and the anima hold when it comes to the process of individuation? Again, simplifying it very much, men have to face their anima, the feminine within them, and women have to face their animus, their masculine within them. Now, the anima and the animus aren't adversarial entities to us, but denying them, repressing them, pushing them away will have problematic results. So we have to acknowledge them and work through the challenges they present. In the struggle against the animus, we're talking about unreasonable aggression, irrational stubbornness, things that really make a person's life more difficult to live with themselves, let alone with other people. So with that knowledge in hand, what do we see happen in the fight itself? Animus will occasionally be on its own, but for the most part it will try to either take over Gnoster or Fortis. The reason why I find it so interesting is because there is a process called Animus possession in Carl Jung's works. It's what happens when a woman is taken over by her repressed masculine elements of personality. In men, it would be some equivalent of anima possession. Now let's take into account the fact that Animus possesses both of our enemies here. Already that makes me think that Gnoster and Fortis are both female. The choice to put Animus and not anima in there is very, very telling, but I think it tells us a lot more. You see, in the story of Elden Ring, we have another dominant god character that is being somewhat possessed by a masculine aspect she cannot fully control or make peace with. Speaking, of course, about Marika and Radagon, which in alchemical terms are often referred to as the White Queen and the Red King. Gnoster clearly being white. And what color is Animus? Red. At this point, my mind was running a million miles a second. It reinforces a thought I had in my head that Nightreign is useful as a lens to examine certain things about the story of Elden Ring that may have not been clear to us on the story on its own. It brings up so many questions because it's not only asking about the psychology of Carl Jung, it is also combining it with the ideas of Gnosticism. And this is just this one boss. So let's try to follow a few of those questions and see where they take us. Is Radagon a part of America? Yeah. Is it possible to consider what Radagon is doing to America as Animus possession? Yeah, mainly because as she was trying to shatter the Elden Ring, he kept trying to fix it. He kept trying to hold on to the Golden Order, being irrationally stubborn. A clear manifestation of Animus possession. Another interesting point that is a part of Jung's theory is that if you will neglect to acknowledge and make reconciliation with the animus on the anima, whatever it is relevant to you, it will marry your shadow. In these words, it will marry your shadow. This is huge because marriage is a ginormous part of the way the story of Elden Ring moves forward. Now let's say what would happen if Marika would reject the existence of Radagon. Who would be her shadow that Radagon marries? I think there are multiple answers to that question. The less likely but still important candidate is Renala. Obviously, Radagon marries Renala as Marika is married to Godfrey, and in the nursery rhyme that the malformed children of Renala sing, or chant, they're talking about resting in Mother's umbra, in Mother's shadow. So that is one option. Another, much more intriguing option is the Gloam-Eyed Queen. What if the Gloam-Eyed Queen is the shadow of Marika? That repressed elements, the place in which all manners of death coalesce? What if Radagon married the Gloam-Eyed Queen? And that's how we got Mesmer and Melina. Now, I'm not the first one to bring that idea, but the thought of Animus possession just threw us all the way back into that conversation. The fact that it backs it up so well is very interesting. But that's not all. The inclusion of Gnosticism throws us another curveball. Because if we're not taking Marika's crucifixion as Christian symbology, but as Gnostic symbology, we're talking about a new interpretation altogether. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the Apocalypse of Peter. I think it's time to talk about it. The Apocalypse of Peter is a Gnostic text describing how Peter is having a conversation with Jesus standing over a mountain, as below them they're seeing the Romans taking Jesus away, arresting him, and crucifying him. Now Peter is obviously losing his mind, asking, how is this? Why is this? And above the figure of the crucified Jesus appears another spiritual, spectral Jesus, laughing. And so Jesus explains to Peter, you see that thing they crucified? That is my physical body. But it is just a prison. What you see laughing above it, that is my spirit. That is the part of me, the divine spark that belongs in the spiritual realm. And we need to escape that prison. So if we interpret the scene of crucifixion like Christianity, Marika being crucified would be the symbol of her taking the sins of the world upon herself. But by Gnosticism, Marika being crucified is equivalent to her escaping the physical realm. And indeed, when Marika falls off the cross, Marika isn't there. Radagon is. You see what I mean when I say this boss fight brings questions that shake the narrative. Now, it's true that the community have suspected these things for a while, but this brings the conversation swinging back. Now consider what it means when there is a hint of Radagon in the second phase, and there is a lot of presence of Marika in the first phase, embodied, of course, by the harp that's prominently there, and that little motif of Radagon. Hell, it even supports my headcanon that Marika got her soul to be reborn through the Ember Egg into Rani, and that's how she escaped. Since escaping out of the physical realm, detaching from it, is the equivalent of enlightenment. Even beyond Gnosticism, I'm pretty sure that in Buddhism, there is the idea of samsara, of reincarnation, but there is an escape from it because there is an illustration of Buddha pointing at the moon. So, escaping the reincarnation cycle of the physical realm. Those ideas connect together so nicely if you just let them. Now, I'm not sure what's waiting for us on phase 3, But it is an extremely interesting conversation to have. The way that questions really lead us into more interesting places than answers. And all of this rabbit hole is initiated by a couple of names, visual design, and the soundtrack. God, I love video game music. Okay, we're continuing to an uninterrupted listening of Phase 3. Oh, sounds reversed and synthesizers and wow. I have no idea what's the meter. What are these colors? Oh, you're messing with me. Oh, the Night Lord motif. Running in a loop. That's such a weird third phase. That one's bonkers. Like, it's a banger, don't get me wrong, but it's so disorienting and chaotic. Okay, let's break it down. So we're beginning with this scratchy orchestral effect, combining the different instruments into a different beast, something that isn't quite right. You know, something interesting is when you read these Gnostic texts, they are so hard to understand. They kind of remind me of Lovecraft's writing. It reminds me of his writings because of the way that it hopelessly attempts to describe the incomprehensible. The Apocalypse of Peter, for example, it really feels like your mind isn't able to process the information properly. It's kind of frustrating. And because it's written like a fever dream, it makes it all the more mysterious. That's what I get from this beginning. And from this track in general, I think that seeing the physical depiction of Animus, I don't think it's a third insect. Visually, it looks like a plant, a nervous system, maybe a fungi. There are some of these that take over insects, but it really feels like something not fully natural or familiar to us, something alien. And, well, Gnosticism basically said Christianity, but aliens. What I did is very reductive, but you know what I mean. To me, it sounds like they are, for the most part, the string players, they're playing their parts from beginning to end. But something about the way the instruments develop dynamically make it sound like it's being reversed. Now, no matter how they achieved that, I think that's supposed to be evocative of the Animus possession, because it somehow brings them to life. Now, if we are to interpret the end of the second phase as us actually killing Gnoster, and the Animus possession is bringing them back to life, I wonder if again it parallels the fact that Radagon is the only thing that's left when we see Marika falling off the cross. The possible ramifications of the Animus messing with time and life force. It brings a lot of questions. Let's continue. Throughout this whole thing, it is so difficult to know what a strong beat is. You have the melody, you have some rhythmic elements like subdivisions, but this has no compass, no up or down. It really feels like what happened to Sophia in the creation myth of Gnosticism when she tried to comprehend the pleroma. Now that I'm thinking about it, it also reminds me of Merica trying to dive into the depths of the Golden Order, because the days of blind belief are long gone. It's very difficult to pin down what the parallels are, but you can see the different pieces being there. The more you try to understand it, the more it's slipping away from you. And I really feel that in that way, Gnosticism, this soundtrack, and its applications to America, I think they all unite in that manner. All of it is just so very slippery. They really don't want you to know what the meter is. They really are giving you no ground to stand on. There are emphasized moments and chaos. Because again, just like it did in Libra, they don't have zero directions. They throw you in multiple directions at once. So there are things that would make you feel, oh, we're still in the waltz. But if you try to find a strong beat, you're likely to come up short. This is some meticulous work, people. Like, that's some music magic. Harmonically, they are having such quick transitions of color. By the time you manage to get a grasp on what's the level of tension we're supposed to be feeling, they already change it, and they don't change it to something close by. They change it into something that feels alien to what has been established before. All of that just shows you how different Animus is within this fight than the other beings. They really want you to know that, at least I feel that way, they really want you to know that Animus is not the same as the other two insects. They not like us for real, for real. Da 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 da. It's such a dark melodic line. It is so tense. It really is a much harsher color than we had at the beginning of this, like at the phase 1. We are somewhere completely different now. And now they're going to make again one of these stretches of time in which they mess with the tempo, so you know that you are screwed. That's the general attempt, right? Now, it's not about how difficult this fight is in particular, but more about how grave the scenario is. They are slowing it down just for a moment. It's not like it's so abrupt. They squeeze out that bar. They just make the freaking most out of it and go directly back. Now here it's much more emphasized, and you can notice it. The cello and the bass have a very quick melodic line. Boop, 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 boop. And it's very intense and noticeable. And contrary to that aggressive low nature, which mechanically is more fortis oriented, we have the long ethereal lines on the top that are much more descriptive of Gnoster. Oh, whoa, whoa. Now I feel a bit more of that dance we felt before. Da 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 da. Even then, I'm not sure the meter is consistent. I'm not sure the length of the phrase is consistent. They want to throw you off. It really keeps you throughout the entire track with bated breath. You keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. It never does. It never will. It's fascinating work. So now we have a much clearer understanding of the rhythm. We have the grand casa, the big orchestral bass drum, kind of giving us the pulse of the dance, just underlying everything. So we have a bit more clarity about what's up and what's down and when. But there is such multi-layered approach here to the writing. It's a beautiful approach because it treats the orchestra like an instrument. These aren't things that you could do if you looked at the orchestra as a collection of instruments that can play melodies. This phase in particular treats the orchestra like a different being altogether, like the orchestra is some incomprehensible Lovecraftian entity. Think about how many different types of mechanical instruments and different players with their own sense of time and their own sense of pitch and their own musicality are a part of the orchestra. We're talking about an amalgamation of dozens and dozens of entities, something very difficult to wrap your head around. And here it's written that way. It's written so you feel it. It doesn't need to sound like horror to be a Lovecraftian instrument. So yeah, it's confirmed. I'm giving this track Land Octopus out of 10. Ta-dee-da-da. That is a tiny line that is very much connected to the main theme, to Heolstor, and I like the fact that it's repeating, because even though this entire epic story is revealed to us through connections, through symbology, we shouldn't forget what we're here for. Narratively, these creatures are being chased away from their home by a catastrophe. And whether they mean it or not, they bring the night with them. You can hear that synthesized sound design. This is not an acoustic instrument. This is processed signal scratching the back of your brain. It is completely alien to the rest of everything we've heard from Gnoster. It doesn't belong here. What a statement to finish the track with. So we have the vocal melody, da dee da 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 dee da da, and we don't hear from the vocals the final note. We only hear the echo of it. Da. If you listen to it, in the echoing that's left after the instruments are gone, the answer is there. Check it out again. It's so faint. It makes you feel like even after all of this unbelievable mass of information, there is an answer. There is an answer. It's just too far away. You keep seeing it. You see the light at the end of the tunnel, but this is as far as you're gonna get to it, which is so evocative of the true divinity of Gnosticism. And it does make me wonder in a way if, when Saint Trina said that godhood would be Miquella's prison, she was referring to the fact that as long as they stay in the lands between. They are still in a world of lies. As long as they stay in the physical realm, there is no escape. You can become a false deity, but you'll never be the false deity that pulls the strings, which is the greater will. Or, alternatively, the true divinity that is so far beyond in the cosmos, you have zero connection to it, which is the one great. Because when we talk about the one great, we usually think about a Big Bang event that made it explode into different stuff. But the way Gnosticism talked about its highest divinity is that it emitted other entities from it. It multiplied by almost mitosis. This was a fascinating exploration. Thank you so much for tuning into that. And thank you so much for 1,000 subs. I am super excited. And yeah, I hope you stick with me for more geeky, nerdy explorations of gorgeous, gorgeous music. Just do me a favor, don't forget to hydrate, stretch, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one.